Hello, welcome back to Beth will be reading. Today's video is going to be very therapeutic, maybe for you as well if you read any of these books, but we're going to go over the worst books that I read in 2024. Yeah, you're about to see someone release negativity. This is going to release negativity. This is going to be empowering. This is going to be a lesson learned. If you ever feel some type of way when you're reading a book, don't be scared to DNF it. I, unfortunately, am very stubborn, and once I start, I can't stop, so I'm gonna continue to be toxic. But me letting this out about these books that I had a bad time reading, hopefully you look at it and you're like, let me be healthy, and if I feel this type of way when I'm reading a book, I should DNF. So I actually have notes, and we're gonna be pointing to do the book because I don't own any of them except for one. I own one of the books that I hated that I read last year. The rest I don't, and I have notes because I can't put into words without having an outline of how each of these books made me feel and why I hated them. So I have notes, so I'm going to be occasionally glancing at them. So the first book is Redwood and Wildfire by Andrea Hairston. For me, I'm always seeking books that are by Black authors or star Black women especially. So this takes place at the turn of the 19th century, and it follows an African American woman, and she is on this journey from going to Georgia to Chicago. I don't remember why, but she's going on this journey with an Irish man whose name is Aiden. So I initially sought this out because it has a Black woman, and this takes place, at least now, I want to read more books that have to do with like slavery and that time period, and so I was interested in reading it. But what I had an issue with this book is that it was very hard to follow. Maybe I'm not smart enough to read it. Maybe this is a book that just like for people who are very smart, they can understand what was happening, but for me, I couldn't understand at all. I was very confused. I had a headache. I think it took me almost a month to read it. And I know what you're thinking, why didn't you DNF it? Because I had bought it. I bought the book and I was like, no, I'm gonna give it a chance. But I don't have it anymore. I gave it away when I was unhauling. That's the funny thing too. Some of these books that I'm going to complain about, I did own them, but when it came to unhauling, they were the first to go. I don't have much to say because I did read this in April, and so my memory on this book is like very hazy. I just, at some point, it just felt like, you know, in school when you were assigned to read certain books and you just read it to read it? That's how this book felt. I felt like I was in high school all over again, required to read The Things They Carried or something like that. And I'm not putting any like diss on The Things They Carried. I haven't read it again as an adult, and I didn't appreciate books and reading as much as I did in high school, but that's just how I felt reading this book. If you decide to read it, or if you have read it, let me know. This next book, honestly, I'm very surprised that, well, I'm surprised about all of them. I read all of these in the hopes that I would really enjoy them. That's why I sought them out. So you would think when you pick up these books, you're not going to hate them. So the next one is Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This book was released this year, and I read it in September. Specifically, audiobook. I listened to the audiobook. This is after I read Legends and Lattes, I read The Spell Shop, and I realized through reading those that I enjoy cozy fantasies. And those were really good because Legends and Lattes was about a coffee shop. And what did they do in the book? They went through the process of making the coffee shop. The Spell Shop, it's about this librarian, and she starts to that, like it was about what the title tells you, right? So I assumed that because this is Can't Spell Treason Without T, that this book would be about tea, would be about treason, but mainly about tea and about a tea shop and books. And do you know what this book mainly consisted of? Arguments, fighting, high stakes, just mess. The couple in this book man, do they need therapy. They just constantly bickering. I'm like, I don't want this. I want to read about tea. I want to read about how you're getting this tea shop. I don't mind the treason. The way I thought this book was gonna be is, okay, the treason's happening in the beginning. One of the girls, whatever, is like, yo, I'm not gonna be a knight anymore or whatever. And then the rest is about the tea shop. But there was no tea. There was no reference to different types of teas. There was no, like, that's what I wanted. I wanted a boring, I know people are like, oh, cozy fantasies are boring. I wanted that. I didn't want this bickering back and forth. It was so irritating. They literally just argued. It was just about a couple who was arguing all the time. It was not about tea. It was not about treason. It wasn't cozy reading it. I was just infuriated the whole time. And I know there's a second book, and I'm so sorry to be going off like that. I'm crashing out right now. This book really, I was super upset because I was like, no, I'm gonna always love every cozy fantasy that's ever gonna be put out there. That's my girl. That's my number one. We besties. I was not besties with this book. I was stressed. I was very stressed. So I'm not going to say anything else about this book. Clearly, I feel some type of way. I am not yelling at you. I was angry. I'm angry. Oh man, I'm back in September now. Oh my gosh. All right, now that we have calmed ourselves down, let me have some Propel. I'm fine. I need to take a deep breath. Wow, I really hated Can't Spell Treason without tea. Oh no, my cat, y'all. Okay, now that we have calmed down a little bit, let's get to the next book. The next one is The Icks by Freida McFadden. I read this book in June and I read it on the Kindle. Now, before I tell you why I didn't like this one, I want you to know something, okay? Freida McFadden, last year, I'm filming this on January 2nd, by the way, so it's gonna be confusing when I say last year, month, whatever. So, last year, realized that Freida McFadden and I, after I read the Housemaid trilogy, when I read it, it wasn't a trilogy yet, or the third book hadn't come out, so let me correct myself. Once I read the Housemaid, I was like, Freida, I'm going to be here with you through the good and the bad. We are married at this point. You are one of my favorite authors. It took the Housemaid, honestly. My most read author has been Freida McFadden. I have read almost every book that she's put out there, almost. There's still a few that I haven't read, like The Inmate, The Devil Wears the Scrubs, whatever that is. And then her, like, The Housemaid's Wedding, you know, things like that. But her and I've dedicated myself to reading everything that she put out there because that's just what it is. We're dedicated now. And so I read The Icks and I was like, ooh, this is gonna be some tea, right? What this ended up being for me was super confusing. So what did she do right in The Icks? The plot twist. I read Freida's books and sometimes the plot twist hits, sometimes it doesn't. The plot twist on this book hit. However, I felt like I had to go backwards. And then when I went backwards, I was confused because there were multiple point of views and multiple timelines. And, you know, she'd be doing that before and after in her books, but these multiple point of views with no names, and then the before and after, and then you get the answer, and you're like, whoa, I'm gagged because this is crazy, but now I'm confused. I don't like feeling that way after I finish a book. I want to feel, after I read a thriller, like, whoa, that was so crazy, crazy plot twist, but I understand how we got here and whatnot. Not, oh man, I have to read this back and then stop for a second and then think about, oh, but that reference of that person is this and that and that, ah! So that's why it was just bad for me. I don't, that's just not how I want to feel after reading a book. Wow, I keep, like, after I finish, like, talking about why I didn't like these books, I feel like my blood pressure just on something else. Hold on, I need more Propel. Okay, this next one, I've made a video about this before, and so I won't bore you too much with this. Or maybe I will. I don't know. The next, and I'm going to just do these three in one, is the first, second, and third book to the Zodiac Academy series. Before I indulge myself in reading Zodiac Academy, I love astrology, I love tarot, I love all that stuff. Do I do that stuff? No, but I know my big three, I know my big six. I have co-star. I like to read my horoscope once in a while. Things like that. So I'm like, oh, this book is called Zodiac Academy, and it's about two twins who are Gemini, two twins who are going to be in the Gemini house or something like that. I don't remember how things work in this book, but I was like, Zodiac Academy, bet, let's go. There's a guy who's a Taurus. I don't know. All these things, I just was like, oh, and it's fantasy, right? Like, oh, there's werewolves and vampires and stuff, and zodiacs, and that's, sign me up, sign me up. However, okay, it is a dark romance. Did I read that it was a dark romance? No. Did the cover give it away that it's a dark romance? Yes. So that was on me. I will say it was my fault. I didn't read the trigger warnings, didn't do all that. So of course, I was very, 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 very heated with all of the bullying because they weren't getting their lick back. I felt like they weren't getting, and I know maybe like if I would have read on, maybe things would have gotten better, but I saw immediately who the authors were trying to have be the endgame ship of all ships, and I wasn't about it. I don't know how things end, but I just feel like the authors are giving, oh, Darcy's gonna end up with Damon, whoever that guy is, and then, no, sorry, Tori's gonna end up with Damon and Darcy's gonna end up with the teacher. And I don't like the student-teacher trope. I just wasn't liking I wasn't liking any of it. Half of it's my fault, didn't do my research. I normally don't. If I just see that, oh, if I just see a title, sometimes I'll pick up a book. If the cover's pretty, I'll pick it up. It doesn't take much for me, sometimes. But this, I really should have kind of looked into it myself, so that's kind of my bad. But, you know, I'll put it below, because I think I remember doing a video talking about Zodiac Academy if you want more on my feelings on that. If you did enjoy Zodiac Academy, you enjoy it, or you're reading it right now, let me know what you enjoy about it. Maybe I need to revisit it. I don't know. Tell me if things get better, if it gets worse. I don't know. Here we go again. I need another sip. Y'all, we're not even halfway through. This is so much. The next book is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I read this book in August, specifically audiobook, and the title alone enticed me. Defensive baking. So I didn't read the back, and so my assumption picking up this book is, oh man, there's going to be fighting gingerbread man, and there's going to be lemon tarts with swords and bundt cakes swallowing people up. I don't know. I just thought there was going to be baking, and then the things that this main character was going to bake is going to just like fight people. It's just going to be OP and fighting people with these baked things. First off, the main character is 14, and this is labeled as young adult. But the way, I don't think 14's young adult, and also reading it and her, like, ooh, I don't know, that's a little bit of a stretch. I think it should have been rated younger, but that's just me. So yeah, should I have read the age and stuff? Yeah, but that's not what made it bad. What made it bad, I mean, that's part of what made it bad, but what really made it bad is, where was the baking? Where was the defense? Half of the time she was off somewhere else, not baking, not baking things and fighting people with the baked things. Where are the cookies with tasers? Like, I don't get it. Like, I thought, I don't know, not every title has to, but you want to see some of it in the book, so I just assumed A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I thought I would be guided on how to bake things that can help me in fights, but I didn't get any of that. I'm like super heated. I gotta calm down. We're not even halfway through, y'all. This is a wild ride we're about to be on. Okay, I'm not gonna dwell on that because we have way more books to go over. The next one, you know, I was talking about Freida McFadden. Unfortunately, another Freida McFadden book made it on this list, and that is Want to Know a Secret. I read this, specifically audiobook, in December, and you would think by then I would have learned, like, DNFing. No, I told you already I'm toxic, right? So when I realized I wasn't enjoying it, at that point I stayed for the plot twist, because the main character April is just super insufferable. And then when the plot twist happened, it was very flat. Very flat. Super much desert. Nah. Yeah, I don't know, Freida, not your best. This book is Black Sunshine by Karina Hale. This book is about vampires, and I love vampire books. Vampires are one of my favorite tropes, and So having to put a vampire book in the hate list is so, it hurts. I'm crying. No, I'm not actually crying, but like I feel like crying. Sad violin, right? If you don't know what this is about Lenore, she was born a vampire, but didn't see signs of her being a vampire until she was in college, and people are after her, and the main love interest is Solon, who knew about her existence and used to watch over her when she was a kid. Yeah, a little icky. Also, like, there was no tension and no yearning, not even a little bit of yearning. Some books, when they want to just, like, rush through the romance, they put a little bit, there was no yearning, what made me feel icky is that, you know, he used to watch over her as a child, yuck. I know, like, vampires are, like, 500 years old, and we're, like, older men, but something about him knowing her existence as a kid and watching over her, yuck, that just, that really, I didn't want, no. So, moving on, the next book, and, ooh, I'm scared to say this one, because I know this is a popular one. Lark by Alex Astor. I read this in August, and what I will say that this book did good is that the plot twist was spectacular. That was one of the best plot twists I've ever, let me say that, because Frida has had some good plot twists, but one of the best ones I've ever read. I was really surprised. I was gagged. I was like, oh, okay, but this is the thing, and what was hard for me reading this, I love books that are games. So like, oh, there's this main female protagonist who is entered in this deadly game and has to survive in order to help her community or whatever it is. So Hunger Games, Game of Veils, by Eva Chase, Powerless, even though, you know, there's all that, Powerless by Lauren Roberts, which, you know, plagiarizes a little bit on obviously all of that takes influence from like Battle Royale. So I really like that trope, and that's what this has. However, the world building and how the different people who were in this game or whatever, how that worked made no sense to me. I couldn't connect the dots. I couldn't understand it. And so I just didn't feel like, when I got to the plot twist, I was like, wow, that's crazy. But also, I don't feel inclined to continue reading it because I was just very scrambled. Also, I don't really like how the love triangle is done in this book. I personally am starting to, I wasn't a love triangle person before, but I'm starting to open myself up to it. And I did read this like back in, I read this in August, so that was a few months ago. For me, at least for why I don't like it, it's not because it was bad, because I know people enjoy it. I don't know. I'm also upset that I didn't like this one because it's a trilogy, and it's a very popular trilogy, and I do like games in books. I like it. I feel like I'm having the worst crash out right now. Alright, the next book is Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. I read this one in August. What drew me to want to read this is I played D&D for the first time. I literally read this 2 days after I played D&D. And so, based on the cover, based on the title, was it wrong for me to assume that they would be playing Dungeons and Dragons? I thought, if anything, I did read what this was about, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, they're playing, and like, obviously, you know, she's going to be a bard because she likes to sing and musical and stuff. But I thought the musical would either be like, oh, it's a musical of like D&D, or more of them playing D&D and playing it. But 90% of it is her trying to save this musical, and I wasn't a theater kid. Maybe if you're a theater kid, you'll appreciate it, but like, I never made the parts. I did try to be a theater kid. I did try. Did I ever make it in? No. So maybe if you were a successful theater kid, you'll feel a different way. I thought there was going to be more D&D, and that's what I thought it was going to be about. And now I want someone to make a book like that where it's like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons. Like, can someone do that? I really enjoyed D&D, and I wanted more of it. And I know there's like a lot of lore and stuff. I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 again, you know. It was just a letdown. I wasn't happy. Two more books, y'all. So actually, I lied. April Fools. January Fools. So I forgot to record the Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. That was also another ner for me for this year. And this is going to sound very contradictory because I said, you know, like I wanted Can't Spell Treason without T to be, you know, not boring. I don't know, about a tea shop and stuff. And, you know, Encyclopedia of Fairies, there wasn't really much going on. However, I just felt dumb reading this. I don't know. There was a lot of intellect that, you know, my intellect wasn't getting. And it did take me a while to read. I was bored. I feel like there weren't a lot of fairies either. Or the way the fairies were described, I don't know. I didn't want like Tinkerbell fairies, but I wanted fairies that were cool. I didn't really find these fairies cool. Yeah, that's all I have to say. And then we're going through. Okay, so the next one is The Perfect Sister by Desiree. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again when I keep saying before I talk about why I hated these books. I really looked forward to these because I did. So The Perfect Sister, if you're not aware, I read this on the Kindle and I read this in July. It is about this girl who grows up in a society that is made up of entirely black women. They don't have men, they don't have anyone else, like it's black women and they run everything. And yeah, a black woman cult, essentially. Oh, so this is going to be like the most insane book I've ever read, right? Right? No. The premise is super cool. However, there was a lot of work editing-wise. There's a lot of work editing-wise that needs to be fixed because I was confused at times and then there were some like grammatical errors and stuff. Another thing is there were too many point of views, and something I'm realizing I'm starting to really not like in books now is multiple point of views. In fact, I'm just gonna start seeking out books that are just one. I don't need to know what is going on with all of these different peoples and their feelings and what's going on. It's too much. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's very, like, I don't want to read and be confused and be like, wow, I'm juggling all these things. Like, oh, what is this? I don't have that capacity to handle multiple point of views. So there was a lot, and I mean more than 3. I think there were like 6 point of views. It's just like everybody had something to say and everybody had something going on. And I was like, I don't want to know this. Ah! That was the problem. You know, if anything, yeah, the main problems I had with this was the grammar, the pace went too fast, and the multiple point of views. It was a lot. It was a lot. I hope this gets revised somehow. I don't know. I know there's a second book. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to be a hater right now, but like that's just what it is. Okay, so the last one is The Vampire King by Kenya Wright. This, I read it in the Kindle in July. This stars a black woman who was a vampire? Or no, wait, what was the whole thing about this? So she has like, oh, right. So she has like some kind of magic blood that's like crazy or something. It doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't even matter reciting it because what I didn't like is that it went too fast. Let me tell you this though. If you're someone who's looking for a lot of smut and you don't, 80% of this is smut. Once she meets the guy, it doesn't take long before, because at first there's like 2 seconds of it being like, oh, this is so wrong, like we shouldn't do this. Next page. And then they're just going at it over all throughout the whole book. I'm like, wow, no yearning? Not even for a night? What? Maybe if you're seeking that out, this is great. And I know there's another book. I might read it. I don't know. We'll see. Because I think like the world building and what entailed in this book was really good. Where was that? No. There needed to be a balance, I think, of like the world building. There needed to be more time spent on that and less smut. For me, maybe. I don't know. Maybe for you, if you did read it or you're someone who prefers like more smut. I don't know. I think it's because whenever I have too much of something, it starts to not be appetizing anymore. And I did read a lot of romance books last year, and some of them had a lot of smut. And right now I'm going through a phase of reading books that are like end of world survival, I don't know, and thrillers. And maybe, you know, after I get through those and through this phase, I'll be in the mood to read. Ugh, it's heavy on being a mood reader, to be honest. Anyways, that is it for worst books I read in 2024. I hope you enjoyed this. So sorry for the crash out. You know, you just feel a certain way about books you read, and I hope that you learn from this video to DNF. If you feel like your blood pressure is rising, if you feel more twisted than a pretzel, more twisted than Twister, you feel as fallen as playing Jenga, I don't know why I'm going on board games, maybe you should just put the book down. Just don't. And I'm sure for 2025, there will be a video for 2025. So far, hasn't happened though. Happy New Year. I don't know if I said that in the beginning of the video, but Happy New Year. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.